Hi, how you doing, and welcome back to another video on the channel. What we have for you today is our wildcard video going into game week 21, and that second wildcard chip has been made active in the last couple of game weeks, and it could be something that's really interesting you if you're wanting that mid-season turnaround for your team. Even if you're not planning on wildcarding, hopefully this team today will have some different transfer ideas for you moving forward with your own team. If it does and you're new to the channel, why not subscribe? It is free, and we're trying to close in on 300 subscribers, so if you can help with that, it would be really appreciated. We're a small channel trying to grow, and we definitely don't take all the support for granted, so thanks for all those people who've supported the channel so far and continue to do so. It does really mean a lot. So let's take a look at the team, and as we get into it, we've got Pickford in goal. Now, he is actually the leading point scoring keeper in the entire FPL. He's also 5th in total saves made, and Everton they're likely to have a double game week coming up around game week 24-25, so you do kind of want to stock in some of those players from Everton and Liverpool just before that sort of game week, so you're not rushing to get them in at any point. And you don't really want any Everton attackers, really, because they've not scored in 8 of the last 10 Premier League games. So we're kind of limited on options from Everton in particular, which is why I've gone for Pickford. He's someone who gets you save points, but Everton are also really solid in defence. So keeping the trend of high scoring players, we actually have 4 out of our 5 defenders in the top 7 point scoring defenders in FPL. So they've shown that they can do it consistently over the course of the season so far. The only one who isn't is Anthony Robinson, who's actually 13th, which is still really high among all defenders. Fulham have West Ham and Leicester in the next 2 game weeks as well, and we know how poor both of those teams have been so far this season. And they actually have decent fixtures all the way up till game week 29. He ranks 3rd out of all FPL players with 7 assists, which is fantastic for a defender to be 3rd when you include all the midfielders and the attackers. I think even though he's gone up in price, he represents fantastic value. Van Dijk and Gabriel, they kind of speak for themselves. I think it's important to have representation for defences from the top of the league, and Arsenal and Liverpool are certainly both that. Actually, both of these defenders rank in the top 13 for expected goals for defenders as well. So it does just to go to show that not only do they have clean sheet potential, but there is that attacking threat as well. I think Van Dijk in particular recently has been really unlucky with chances from corners, and you can see when you're sort of looking at players from the eye test that he is one of those that's kind of feeling it and probably does have a goal or 2 in him in the near future. Lewis Hall has actually been brought in by about 2 million managers in the last month, and I don't think it's too late to get on it either. He's actually had 3 attacking returns and 4 clean sheets in the last 5 games, and part of that is his attacking prowess going forwards, but also that those clean sheets just goes to show how solid Newcastle are as a unit, and that shouldn't really change moving forward. Ola Aina is actually the highest scoring defender in FPL. Forest ranked 1st in clean sheets out of all Premier League teams, and he's actually got 15 points twice this season. So when Forest are keeping clean sheets, all he needs is one of those attacking returns, and he's got 15 points right there. It's not going to happen every week, certainly not going to happen in the next game against Liverpool, but this defence is so well rounded, you can bench players like Gabriel and Aina in any given game week, or vice versa for any of the players that you're starting, and still feel really confident with them moving forward. So into midfield, and Salah is in everyone's team right now, so I don't need to convince you to get him in. He is having a historic FPL season, and he's someone who you're just probably going to captain every game week, and some people might think it makes FPL a little bit boring, but at this moment in time you do just need to have him in just so you don't fall behind all your mates in your mini leagues. Palmer, I think, is still worth the price. There's not a lot of good alternative midfield options in that range unless you want to drop him down to someone really cheap and get Haaland in up front, which I personally wouldn't do right now. He's still got that big haul potential coming in, and he's also got 2 goals in his last 3 games. But I think for me, he's really just suffering as a fact that Chelsea just aren't playing well. But he has had chances, a couple of game weeks ago, hit the post, hit the crossbar, he had an assist ruled out for offside. I think on another day, if things were clicking for Chelsea, he could be on a massive score that game week. So I do think it's round the corner, and he's someone who definitely has that quality to at least keep points ticking over in the meantime. I mentioned Savio a couple of game weeks ago, and I'm actually gutted I didn't get him in my own FPL team. I just didn't have the transfers at the time and the thought to do it at the time, I guess, as well, to take my own advice. Because since then, in the last 2 weeks, he's got 14 and 13 points in each of those. I also think it's good to have a Man City representative in your squad because they've got good fixtures coming up, and if they have turned that corner, you do want someone in there to take advantage of the points. And at 6.5 million, he's one of the cheapest options, and he's someone who's playing really well. I think in his last 3 games, he's getting those minutes consistently. He's got 79 minutes in the last game and then 90 in the 2 before that. So obviously any Man City player is at risk of rotation, but he is someone who looks like he's here to stay in that squad. And now that they've started winning games, I really don't think they're going to start rotating too much because they can't afford to. They can't afford to lose momentum. They're going to stick with the players they've got. Fulham have some great fixtures, and although Wobie hasn't returned in his last 6 games, part of FPL is predicting the points and where they're going to come from next. And he did, before the last 6 games, get 6 attacking returns in his 6 games before that. So whilst he's only got 6 in his last 12, at one point he was 6 in 6, and he's the sort of streaky player who can get those points in the near future by taking advantage of Fulham's fixtures. And you can get ahead of other FPL managers by getting in on those players first and then getting those points before anybody else decides to get him in. Rounding out the midfield, we've got Sarr as the 5th midfielder. He's cheaper than Eze, and Palace have Leicester, West Ham, Brentford, Man United and Everton in the next 5. He's the sort of player that you will bench on any given game week, but he's a bit of a headache to bench because you know that he has that potential to return. But say the fixtures we've got in this team so far, he would be the midfielder that I would be benching for this next game week. Even though he's got Leicester City away, it could be a potential that you maybe drop a striker for him. But up front, we do have Alexander Isak. Pretty obvious, really. 15 returns in his last 12. I don't know why you would go against him. There is the potential to have missed the boat, but I wouldn't look at players necessarily and look at their previous scores and say, oh, I've missed out on those points. FPL is all about who's going to score the points next. So regardless of how many points he scored, do you think he's going to score points in the future? If you do, then he's still worth getting in. And 9.3 million is creeping up to be a little bit too expensive for someone who tends to get a goal a game. But if you want those consistent points, there's not really anyone better right now. The 2 cheap attackers to finish it off, and that's mainly because we've gone for more expensive defenders this week, but it's also because there's not any standout consistent candidates up front below 9 million. If you wanted to spend a bit more on an Ollie Watkins, I'm just not convinced he's worth it right now. And a lot of players around this sort of price point, the 5.5s, the 6 millions, the 6.5s, it really depends on who they've got for fixtures. Pedro has 3 returns in his last 2, and so does Raul Jimenez. You might say that a criticism is, well, a lot of those goals are through penalties. But that's part of the reason that you get these players in the first place is because they're on pens. So not only do they have pretty good fixtures coming up, I also think by them being on penalties, it just gives them that extra way to score. Like when the team's not necessarily clicking up front, which does happen, half the time with these mid-table teams, having those penalties can really be a lifeline for your game week. So shout out to Fantasy Football Hub. The team rating tool rated this at 96%, and as we always say, as long as it's low to mid-90s, I think you're all right with that, really. There's so many things and variables that the data can't account for in a fantasy league, in a Premier League weekend. How many times you look at your team and you think, oh, they're going to score great this game week, and then they don't, and vice versa. You think they're going to struggle and they end up scoring loads of points. So it's nice to have the data backing it up, but it's not the be-all and end-all. This team value is actually pretty good as well. 100.9 million is exactly what you want in a team because a lot of these players you'll already have. Someone like Salah, someone like Palmer. Well, if you've got Salah in at 13 million, you've just saved 0.6 million on this team anyway. So that's the team value if we were getting them all in on scratch, if we didn't own any of them. But if you already own some players who have gone up in price, if you'd had Lewis Hall and Robinson for a while, well, you've pretty much saved the difference there anyway. So hopefully this team is affordable for anybody. So when I'm looking at it, I'm looking at the strengths, and one of the obvious strengths is bench depth. Like, that is a really strong bench, to be honest. Once Fabianski's back playing as well, you could bench boost on any given game week with a team like that. And it also means that you've got points from all positions. You know, any of those defenders can score points. We've talked about the attacking returns they can get, the save points and potential clean sheets and penalty saves Pickford can make. And then the same in midfield as well and up front. Hopefully you'll be, you know, if one of or two of your players are blanking, some other players in your team will be picking up the slack and getting you those points. For me, the weaknesses is, you know, there's too many cheap players in this team. So players like Iwobi and Sarr, are you going to get the performances consistently? Another weakness is there's not really enough Man City, or rather than saying no Man City, there's no Haaland. You know, and are we turning a corner where Haaland is worth it now? And should you drop some some defenders and some midfielders to cheaper players in order to get him in? So whilst we've got Savio, is there enough Man City players there? So let me know what you think in the comments. Let me know if you've got any general transfer questions as well. It's always great to hear from other FPL managers who want to chat FPL. Please do subscribe if you want to. If you're enjoying the content, it is always really appreciated. And I will see you in the next one.